This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Hoon Lee from Your Friends and Neighbors.
Hi,
How are you,
Abe.
Hoon? I'm a big fan of Jonathan Tropper and Banshee, and while I know you've worked with him on a number of projects,
Hmm.
that was my frame of reference. And so when I
Ah,
saw you in this, I was like, I feel like this character is about as far away from Job as you can get.
well, I mean, to be fair, most characters are pretty far away from Job. Job was a pretty unique character, and I think that Banshee, in and of itself, was a tremendous boot camp for getting into television. It was my first series regular job, and the amount I learned on that show from Jonathan and Greg Utanis, who actually worked on Your Friends and Neighbors season one as well. It was it was immeasurably helpful moving forward, um, and so I feel very fortunate that I've been able to build off of that with Jonathan over time, and you know, continue to work with a person that's seen where I started and has had a good amount of trust and faith in me since then. That's not a privilege I take lightly.
I already said to Jonathan that I feel like if this were the world of Banshee, most of these characters would be dead already, and certainly a
Oh
lot
yeah.
more, violence.
Oh
People
yeah.
get off pretty easy
Yeah,
compared
yeah.
to what happened there.
Yeah, there's yeah, it's interesting though because for a show that's as pulpy as Banshee, or a show built around the world of kung fu like Warrior, or the sort of like post-apocalyptic world of Sea, for example, they work within these genres that create a sort of heightened frame of reality, but that heightened frame is really only a lens in service of looking at relationships and family and friendships, etc. And in this particular show, even though it is more grounded and it's more down to earth and it's a world that's perhaps distant from most of us but more relatable um, than some of those other worlds, it's still a heightened lens that the same ideas are being looked at, the same questions of relationships and the same questions about desires and loyalties and friendships. And so, in some ways, there's quite a bit more relationship than might appear to be on the surface.
How does it work with you and Jonathan? Does he write characters for you? Does he tell you, here's everyone we got? This is, you have your pick of what you want,
No,
or
my
it's a
God,
little.
no. I mean, I think that if there's any, if there's something that I've tried to be quite careful about over the years, is um, that I don't want to take these things for granted. Uh, I don't want to harbor an expectation, because partially because that's not fair, partially because it's somewhat limiting to him as well. I don't want him to feel a sense of obligation to include me in whatever, but also because I just don't think it's terribly respectful. He's the show creator. These are his ideas. He stewards these characters, and um, I feel like he's created characters that are incredibly fun to play, very rich, and where uh, our professional relationship has given me great advantages is that he always gives me a tremendous amount of agency and voice. He gives me the ability to speak to the character, try to offer suggestions, etc. Um, but just in the same way that I know he would never walk in and give me a line reading, I don't want to, overstep my bounds and presume that my sense of what a character should be is the correct take. It's by definition, it's not. Um, but I like to think that that respect between both of us has allowed us to continue to work together and to grow closer together, both as colleagues and as friends.
What is your take on Barney? Do you think that he's a good guy overall?
I think Barney is Barney's first and foremost. I think Barney's really fun because Barney is sort of always between a rock and a hard place, and that's a great place to be energetically. It's really a pleasure to play. Um, what I think we're starting to understand more about Barney is that there's a place where he and Coop naturally intersect because we're watching Coop in a moment where he starts to make a very serious progression of poor decisions. or maybe not poor decisions, but not pragmatic decisions, certainly not what's expected, and things that might be working against the general interest of both himself and his family. And we're also starting to see Barney, just in the same way that Barney's fortunes are tied into Coop's financially, he's sort of starting to get pulled into that whirlpool as well. And we start to see Barney break down, Barney start to make some less than prudent decisions. And this is ostensibly the voice of reason, you know. So I think that in that way, you start to draw a connection between these characters, that they are actually similar in some of their impulses and instincts than one might suppose upon first glance.
Is there anybody in the ensemble that you haven't had a chance to work with much yet that you're hoping maybe season 2, or maybe there's no hope for intersection?
Oh man, I mean, I've wanted to work with everybody. It was funny because in Banshee, Job really intersected only a few characters, and then in Warrior, Chow intersected everybody, and that was I almost feel like Jonathan did that for my sake, because he knew how much I wanted to play with everybody all the time. In this show, it's a little bit more limited in this first season. It seems like it might be opening up a little bit more as we creep into season 2. But, I didn't have that much to do with, Olivia or Amanda. And I had one scene with Amanda in particular that I really enjoyed, and I'd love to get more of that. Amy Carrero, I feel very fortunate that I got to play, obviously, with John, who's, one of those people that just elevates everybody's game, but also Mark Tallman, who plays Nick. He and I get along very well, and our characters have a good time together. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to any opportunity I get to play with anyone there. Lena Hall, my God, I mean, I don't know how that would work, but I'm hoping that can work out at some point. So.
Well, when you're not starring in whatever Jonathan makes, what do you like to watch?
Oh, I just sit around and wait for him to make something. That's pretty. I just sit dormant in a corner, waiting for something to come through the email. I found more recently that I'm trying to read more in general, and trying to sort of think about creative input in a more holistic way, in a more 360-degree way. I do find that it can be a bit of a trap where you're trying to watch everything, and you maybe aren't taking them on board as deeply as you should to really learn from them. And I sometimes find it easier to manage that process when it's a different medium. So right now I'm not pressing myself to watch a ton of things. I'm just trying to read trying to read more and trying to expand in a slightly different way.
I really appreciate that answer, because despite working as a TV critic, and obviously this is what I do, I ask this question to a lot of people, and that is the first time I've heard something other than I'm too busy or here are all the shows I watch. So I applaud you for an original answer to that question.
We're trying. That's all we can do.
All right, well, so nice to meet you, and looking forward to seeing more of what's going on here.
Thanks very much, Abe. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.